Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And it is great to have you back, Allie, but no offense, that is not the hot topic right now, as we literally just hit record. San Diego Wave announced that they have parted ways with head coach Casey Stoney, and we are both stunned, taken aback. We quite literally haven't even shared our thoughts really with each other. We were just like, let's go. Allie, it's great to have you back, but we got to just jump right into this.
We do. Let's just start with the official statement from Jill Ellis, of all people, has put her name to it. We are immensely grateful to Casey for her commitment to our club and the positive impact she has had both on and off the pitch. Over the past seasons, Casey has guided us to significant milestones, and her contributions have been instrumental in laying a strong foundation on which to build. The decision to part ways was very hard and not made in haste, but given the ambition of this club and where we are in our season, we felt a change was necessary at this time.
Wow. So stunned right now. I think there's a lot of things going through my mind in that, first of all, look, if this was anybody but Casey Stoney, I don't think that we would be this shocked, because the reality is they had a fantastic year. They won the Shield last year, and they really have underperformed so far this year. Right now, they're sitting in 9th place, just 1 place below the playoff line, 3 wins, 6 draws, 5 losses. They've drawn 4 of their last 5 games. It still feels a little preemptive, I guess. Yeah, I guess I do think that we would be less shocked if it was somebody other than Casey Stoney. But if it was still a coach that was this successful, at least give them the whole season. To go halfway through this season, and they have been dealing with injuries, it's just it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it completely. Sorry. And also, when you realise how Stoney struggled to get her family across, and it's only just happened, she's managed to get the visas for her kids and her wife, it feels extra harsh. I don't know why, than it is to have if you'd fired an American coach because she has to go through all of that. But yeah, Casey Stoney has really cemented herself at the Wave, and I just think, yeah, it's a bit of a blip. You guys are having a blip. You've got some really bad injury issues that you've not really been able to recover from, and yeah, I would have given her the season. You guys don't have relegation, so it's not like she's having to fight a relegation battle. You guys might not finish exactly where you wanted this season, but then that means you get better pickings in the draft.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, too, I think a big problem with San Diego is that they don't have the personnel. They didn't make the right changes in the offseason, and that is not solely Casey Stoney's fault. That is also partly Jill Ellis's fault and GM and everything like that. So this feels really disappointing. It feels a little scapegoat-esque. Most recently, Casey Stoney was complaining about how teams have 3 games during the week, and that should never happen in a regular schedule. And I agree with her. When I genuinely was like, was there a mistake here? Maybe Casey Stoney was upset and over it and is leaving the NWSL, but that's not what has happened. But this is truly the reason why it's mind-boggling, is because Casey Stoney is, without a doubt, one of the best coaches we have at the club level in all of the women's game right now. And to fire her is beyond me. I kind of hope Chelsea can jump on this and bring her back or something like that.
I'm telling you, she's going to Villa. I'm calling it now. Casey Stoney is going to be coaching Villa.
There's also a lot of places she could go in the NWSL that would be very happy to have her. But this does feel a lot like, I guess, Casey Stoney is so good at building a team. She did it at Manchester United. They gave her the money and the keys to the lockbox, and she built a great team, with the core of which is honestly still there. And she did the same thing here with San Diego, and that seems to be really a huge strength of hers. There's a lot of clubs that could benefit from that. So I'm genuinely in shock, but I think those are my main points. This feels preemptive to me, and I think that San Diego will regret it. She is one of the best head coaches we have at the club level. You're going to be pressed to find somebody who could do better. And I just feel for her. Final thoughts on Casey Stoney before we actually get into the agenda of today?
Just the NWSL doesn't deserve you. Come back home. Come back to the WSL.
You know what? Historically, I would have disagreed with that. But after this, I totally agree. How dare you fire Casey Stoney midseason? I think that she's done enough to earn the respect of letting her see out the year and see what happens. And frankly, when you're sitting just one spot below the playoff line in the NWSL, not just one spot, also 1 point below the playoff line in the NWSL. I mean, they could end up in third place. Anything could happen in this league.
Say, have San Diego not learnt from Gotham, who squeezed into the playoffs and then took the title?
Just wow. If there's a press conference that we can join and get more information to tell all of you, we certainly will. Without further ado, Allie, let's get into it. We're talking more NWSL today, including top of the table races. We're, of course, talking news out of Reading, and the WSL transfer window is open. We're going to get into all of that. Let's do it. To kick it off, we're going to talk some news that has made waves over in England, but I don't think it's made its way across the pond in the way that, frankly, it should, because this is big news. Reading FC have announced that they may be removing the women's side due to financial problems. The team were relegated last season from the WSL and this year cemented their place in the championship. Allie, tell us everything there is to know about this story.
So the writing's been on the wall for Reading for a while. So when they got relegated from the WSL, they let Kelly Chambers go, who had been their long-term manager, been at Reading for basically as long as Emma Hayes had been at Chelsea, due to the fact she was too expensive. Like, they blamed the relegation, but the fact is that she's seen Reading through so much, you would give her another season. And then announced that the players would have to go part-time in order to keep them going. Now, Reading, for my international listeners that aren't aware, their men's side are not a Premier League team. They are in the men's championship, I believe, and have had, it's a bit like Birmingham City, and have gone up and down multiple times. They have gone through some financial issues because of the men's side. Their stadium is technically really too big for them because it's from when they were a Premier League team. So there's a lot of upkeep for their stadium, and they've just been financially struggling for a while. I think the biggest problem with Reading is it's so close to London, so a lot of fans of the men's side will go see some London teams play because you can be in London within 30 minutes from Reading. So people are not seeing their local team. And that has trickled now down to the women's team. And they've basically said, it's not been announced officially, but Reading are looking to have a takeover, and it's likely that the women's side will not be part of that takeover if it happens, because there's no money left, apparently. The biggest problem we've got is this leaves players in limbo. Because as we're going to allude to, we're going to talk about the transfer window has opened in the UK. They have lost some players. Ex-guest and fan of the WOSO show, Brooke Hendricks, left this season and has now joined a USL team. Tampa Bay, I believe she's at now. And they've lost others as well. But it leaves these players hanging because do they try and go somewhere? Do they try and get a transfer? Do they stay? Is it rats leaving a sinking ship?
It's so disappointing. Once again, it's just that the women's team is tossed to the side and is just thought of as secondary and disposable. And listen, we had Amy on the past few weeks, and she was literally talking about how Manchester United, she's not even sure if the owners are thinking about the women's side. It's just kind of there. And it feels, obviously it's not exactly the same, but this feels similar.
Yeah, so fans of the WSL long term will notice this parallels Notts County. So Notts County were in the WSL for about a season and a half, I think, and they had some talent there. Like Alex Greenwood played for Notts County, Ellen White played for Notts, Carly Telford was goalkeeper at Notts, Mary Earps was there briefly. You know, Laura Bassett was there. If you want to Google one of the greatest free kicks of all time, look at the Laura Bassett, Alex Greenwood, Ellen White free kick against Arsenal. It is something special. And they were doing well. They got to an FA Cup final. Eni Aluko was there. Like, they got far. And then literally overnight, they were due to play Arsenal on the Sunday. They were told on the Thursday, there is no team. The team is gone. And some players got an inkling. I know Ellen White orchestrated a move to Birmingham before that happened. And it seems very similar to this. And it did end a few players' careers. Laura Bassett comes to mind because Laura Bassett couldn't find a club for a long time, ended up doing a season in Australia and then retired because there was nothing really she could do now. She'd been out of the game for so long. And you talk about Man United, we've seen it now that their owner, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, has talked about saying the fact that they haven't even thought about the women's team right now because they're focusing on the first team. I do this in air quotes, which is the men's team. And they said that they won't be even thinking about it until they fix.
Did they use that terminology? They called the men's team the first team?
He did. He said until we sort out the first team, meaning the men's team.
Well, that's everything right there. That's exactly how they see it. Exactly.
And that's what we're seeing with Reading. And the problem is they haven't got Premier League money. They barely survived relegation, both women's and men's, this season. And it feels like they may give up their place in the Championship and go down a level to go down to the Southern League, where they can get away with being part-time, because as things stand in the Championship, you have to pay your players a full-time wage to be in the Championship.
The bar is so low.
Yeah, but it could just go. Is the answer. And I feel for the players because they are now stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't know whether they should be looking for transfers and getting out, or do they stay with the team that may not be there in a month or so's time.
This is a team that just 3 years ago were like middle of the table WSL. They had players like Ebony Salmon and Rachel Rowe leading the charge, and it just seems like everything exploded since then. They had a very steep fall from middle to bottom of the table. It felt like that was the moment that they needed to inject money into the team to keep those players around, to bring more players in. Instead, everybody left. They fell to the bottom, and it's just gotten worse and worse since then. And like you said, they got relegated, and now this. It's just incredibly disappointing.
Yep. So as ever, we will keep you updated as we know. We'll check our socials, check our pod. We'll keep you as updated as we can. But unfortunately, Royals fans, it isn't looking good. Over to something a bit lighter, to the NWSL. And before we hit into table talk and games of the weekend, we have to say that Seattle Reign have made the announcement that in August they're going to retire Megan Rapinoe's number. This makes for the 5th NWSL player ever to receive this honour. Other players include Lauren Holiday, the number 12 at Kansas City in 2015, Jonah Lohman, 15 at Washington Spirit in 2019, Leslie Osborne at Boston Breakers, the number 12 in 2015. And finally, Laurie Calponi, the number 17 at Chicago Red Stars at 2016. I feel like this is more of an American thing than a British thing, because we retire numbers when people have died tragically. We don't do it.
We do it very differently then. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think I can think of one instance where we've done it for a celebratory reason.
That's so funny.
Done it with people who died young.
That's so sad and tragic. No, we do it for happy reasons here. We celebrate the career of somebody who we feel like was so great. Nobody really should ever don that number again on the team, and it's a really, really big deal. I think that there's only one player in the history of all of American sports whose number is retired across the entire league, and that's Jackie Robinson. Nobody can wear Jackie Robinson's number in baseball. And otherwise, it's just a very team by team thing.
Yeah, it's team by team. I can think of in England, the England men can't wear the number 6 because that's based off of a captain. Again, though, who died young. He won the World Cup, but he died quite young.
I don't love that. I mean, it's nice and to commemorate, but that's kind of sad. So actually, ESPN reported this wrong. They said that she was only the second player in history to have her number retired. That is incorrect. And a shout out to the one and only Keeper Notes. You should follow Jen. She is the encyclopedia of the NWSL. And I don't say that as a metaphor. There are years that were simply not documented at the start of the NWSL, like the first season. And they just all live with Jen Cooper. So go follow Keeper Notes because she corrected them. I mean, I'm so happy that they're doing this. And you can't do this on the national team. You just can't, because there's only a certain number of numbers that people can wear. And there's a lot of great players for the national team. But I'm happy that this is happening for Seattle. And she deserves it. It's going to be a fun night. We get to hear Megan Rapinoe do public speaking again. And that's always a treat. It's always a show. All right, but let's move on. Let's talk NWSL, because last week we mentioned how we hadn't talked a lot about the Washington Spirit. So let's do it. The Washington Spirit in the top of the table. That's what we're covering right now. And the Spirit have been flying under the radar despite having actually won the most games so far. They've won 9 compared to both Kansas City and Orlando have won 8 games. They sit just 1 point below Casey and Orlando in the table. And just flying under the radar. Before this past weekend, 4 teams had unbeaten streaks, 13-game unbeaten streak for both Kansas City and Orlando, obviously, the 2 remaining unbeaten teams. More than halfway through this season, unbeaten, unbelievable. 8-game win streak for Gotham. We'll talk about that. That was snapped this weekend by the one and only Spirit, who had a 5-game winning streak coming into this weekend. Make that 6 after their win over Gotham, but we're not going to get onto that yet. Let's talk really quickly. Kansas City and Orlando, the 2 unbeaten teams, both won big this weekend. Orlando, a 6-0 win over Utah. Kansas City, 4-1 over Portland. I was stunned at that. I sat down like, oh, I'm going to see a game. And honestly, by halftime, I was like, I could turn this off. I've seen enough.
Yeah, again, Portland, one of the most inconsistent teams this season. They're either absolutely flying or we see what we saw this weekend.
Which was nothing.
Which was nothing. I just want to quickly shout out with Orlando, because as I message you guys, what team do you want to face? Like, what team is going to want to face them when you've got Banda and Marta up front? You know,
that was special to see them combine as they did.
Like, Marta's first goal was absolutely beautiful, and then obviously Banda has just some of the stuff, like, I was watching, and it's like, even if you look at the shots she didn't get, like, that were saved or were just wide, the little tripping past defenders, she is undefendable. She is undefendable.
She's creating the goals. She scored 2 goals in this game. She's got 10 goals in 10 games, I believe it is, so far in the season. And you're not even counting the assists. She had a Marta assist, or any of the goals that she just fully, like, created the opportunities for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Orlando are absolutely flying. I can talk about so many players. You got Yates, what came in and absolutely smashed one home for the final goal. And yeah, but then again, Kansas City, it's finally cementing. How long have we been saying for Kansas City?
Well, for real.
No, we've been saying this for Kansas City for so long that you guys have had the pieces, but you've not had that cement to, like, make the pieces stick in the right formation. And this is going to be a fun season in the NWSL. I feel it. I
mean, it already is. Yeah, I think you said it best. Kansas City played Portland in the 2022 championship, and we genuinely thought that they would just keep growing from there, because that game was it wasn't a great championship game. Portland destroyed them. And last year was just such a fluke for Kansas City. We didn't know what happened because, like you said, it felt like the pieces were there, but nothing was coming together. And it certainly has come together for them. They are just quite literally a goal-scoring machine. Scored the most goals out of anybody in the league so far. They just are unstoppable. A couple fun facts. They've got 17 different goal scorers across their team this year. 17. That's wild. That in and of itself, I think, describes a lot of why they're sitting where they are on the table. And we have to just shout out Lo LaBonta got her first ever career brace this past weekend with a banger. An absolute banger of a goal. Oh my goodness, she let that one rip. That was just top bins banger. If you haven't seen it, honestly, pause this podcast, go watch the highlight. It's worth it, I promise. All right, on to Washington and Gotham FC, because Gotham hosted Washington Spirit in New York this past weekend during a massive heat wave. It was so hot there was a heat advisory. They had to move the kickoff time to later. Listen, it was 90 degrees plus humidity. It was the feels like was like 100 plus. It's absolute insanity. Shout out to any fan that went out in that heat, because I've been in that stadium and there is no wind. It just, like, the air just sits. So to sit in that Good on you if you were there.
As we alluded to, though, however, Gotham's streak was broken because the Spirit took it 2-0, and Gotham played the second half pretty much with just 10 players. That was crazy.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't think we were going to talk about it, but we kind of have to talk about it. It was
because it was wild. Because like I wasn't watching it, I was keeping up with it while I was doing something else, and it was like, so-and-so's got a yellow card. All right, wait, no, it's a red card. I was like, what happened in like 30 seconds?
Even as I was watching the game, I was like, hold on a second. Is that just happened? So Yasmin Ryan got her first yellow card, deservedly so. Normal play, doesn't matter. We'll move on. And then truly at the end of the first half, it might have even been in injury time of the first half, she had come off the field because of an injury. She thought she had been waved on, so she came on. Turns out she hadn't been waved on, and there was some confusion there. And because she came onto the field without having been waved on by the referee, she got a yellow card. Now, this is where I'm like, to people who are like, rules are rules. Yeah, that's technically the rule, but this is the dumbest second yellow card I've ever seen. And I feel for Gotham because I just mentioned how hot it was. You really just like can't come back from a 2-0 deficit down 10 players in that heat. That heat, you need your full squad.
You saying that's dumber than Sophia Smith's second yellow? I mean, I was off for that discussion, but I'm like...
You try and bring that back, huh?
I'm just saying.
No, I think that might trump it. I think that might trump the Yasmin Ryan, yeah.
You think that was dumber than the Sophia Smith second
I don't actually. But it is such a bummer.
Oh no, it is stupid. Like 100%, and I do 100% feel for Gotham on that one because, like you said, it was so hot. They've only got 10 players. Yes, they can make substitutes, but they're still one player down, and you have to make a player play longer. But you know what? Washington Spirit, you can't take it away from them. They owned that game. They absolutely dominated that game. They deserved the 3 points they came away with. You know, it was phenomenal. And again, they're a team that were up there for a while, and then they sort of fell apart in the 22-23 season and were much lower. But do you know what? They did really good business in the transfer window and the draft.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, first of all, couldn't agree more about what you said. The Spirit dominated that game, and they had fallen off for a couple of years. And then, yeah, it was the moves in the offseason. I mean, we started this episode talking about how San Diego did not make the moves that they needed to make in the offseason. And conversely, Washington Spirit did an amazing job. And it has to be said, the additions of French international Sarr, along with rookie Croy Bethune, and adding Casey Kruger to the lineup, the three of those injected into this lineup, I think has been the huge difference. And I have to say credit to Croy Bethune because she should be Rookie of the Year. Honestly, no matter how the second half of this season goes, it's just what she's doing is tremendous. But adding Casey Kruger has helped this team more than we can really even put into words right now. The attacking threat that she adds is outstanding. All you have to do is watch the highlights of this game and you'll see how those goals, or at least one of them, is created because of her and because of her offensive threat. And it was a risky move. I didn't understand for a moment when they sent Staub to Chicago for Kruger. But at the end of the day, this has been a great move for Washington. It's been a great move for Kruger. And it's been a great move for Staub in Chicago. So everybody wins.
I was going to say this is one of the few like draft swaps that has made it didn't make complete sense at the time, but it's worked itself out, and it actually now does. And it seems that both players are much happier. They're both creating. They're both doing what they love to do, and we love to see it. It's actually been fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like it had just gotten a little stale at both of their respective clubs for those two players, and just some newness and a new coach and a new environment and a new challenge is what they needed. And I would love to see both of them on the plane to France, but hey, maybe that will drop between this recording and when it's released. You never know. The final piece, I think, the second final piece on Washington Spirit, we have to say, look, if you look at the goal differential, you're wondering why this team is up so high. They've got the most wins out of anybody in the league. They can score. They are only second behind Kansas City in the most goals scored out of all teams in the NWSL. They've got 29 goals on the year. That's more than Orlando, and that's saying something.
The final piece of news out of Washington. You may remember we broke that Barcelona's coach was set to come over to Washington to coach them after Barcelona's season was over.
Yeah. So finally we get him. Jonathan Giraldez came over a few days before this Washington Gotham game, and everybody was like, okay, so is he going to take over immediately? What's the situation here? Washington really just said, we're going to give him some time to integrate. So the interim head coach who had been coaching this team this entirety of the season, Adrian Gonzalez, served as the head coach on the sideline still, as he had this whole past year in New York against Gotham. And today it was announced that that game was Gonzalez's final game as interim head coach. He ends that with a record of 10 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses. And as of now, Jonathan Giraldez will take over as the acting manager of Washington Spirit. This is really fascinating because, first of all, you have a record like that as an interim head coach. I see him maybe getting hired somewhere in the league or somewhere as an actual, head coach because of what he San Diego. Perhaps. No, truly, perhaps, because of what he was able to do. And now this is kind of interesting because you have this world-class coach coming from Barcelona, but are you kind of messing with something that's been working? Or are you taking that and elevating it? And it's going to be one or the other.
I don't know how this is going to work, I generally, because you think, in theory, he's a Barcelona coach. Look what he's done at Barcelona. This is going to be phenomenal. But like you said, there is some magic that's happening at Washington Spirit. I don't know. Are you adding one too many ingredients? But you've already given him the job. So just send him to San Diego.
We will see. And finally, before we leave the NWSL, we've got to continue the countdown to when the undefeated teams could potentially clash. I think when we brought this up, Allie, I was like, listen, the odds of Kansas City and Orlando playing each other and still being undefeated when they finally meet are very low. And now...
Those odds are high.
Yeah, we're just one game away. So Kansas City and Orlando have not faced each other yet this season. And there are 2 weekends of the NWSL left before they break for the Olympics, right? So this coming weekend and then July 5th. And Kansas City and Orlando are set to face each other on July 5th, that final weekend before they break. And that means this coming weekend is the final game that they really both have to win for us to see undefeated versus undefeated. Do you think it'll happen, Allie? We've got Kansas City hosting Houston Dash. That's the first meeting of the season. And we've got Orlando at Angel City. This is the second meeting between those two teams. The first one ended in a draw.
I think we will, because I can easily see Kansas City getting something out of Houston, be a point or a win. I'm going to be honest. Sorry, Houston fans, but I think it's going to be a win over the Dash. And Orlando are playing such electrifying football right now. They have got it locked both in the, I'm going to use my American terminology, in the offense and the defense. And they've got it locked down.
What's the English way of saying that? In the offense and the defense. What would you say? In the attack? In the defense?
Yeah, defensively and in the attack, or up front. There you go. It would be defensively and up front. Because that's how we roll. But they've got it locked. They've genuinely, watching the Utah game, and I know Utah have not been the toughest opponents for people, but they handled Henry, who is probably Utah's most powerful threat right now, really well. They played the ball to Henry all the time, and either defensively with the actual front line or the goalkeeper Morehouse handled it superbly, didn't seem to make them sweat. And so I think they can do something at Angel City. So I do think that clash is going to be the clash of the Titans, and is someone going to lose their unbeaten streak in that game?
So excited. I know you are. We're going to cover it. It should be noted, Kansas City will be at home for 2 weeks in a row, Houston and then Orlando. And Orlando will be on the road going to LA and then Kansas City. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world. To Spain, Real Madrid is seeing a mass exodus. That is the only thing we can really call it. 7 players' departures were announced within 1 week, with Haley Rasso's departure being the most recent announcement.
To Germany, and the Frauen Bundesliga has announced they will expand from 12 teams to 14 teams for the 2025-2026 season. Next season will be the final season of just 12 teams in the first division.
And over to the USA, a reminder that the NWSL has 2 more weekends before they break for the Olympic break. This weekend and next will be the final weekends, and the NWSL will resume play on August 23rd. In the meantime, the NWSL and La Liga MX are hosting the Summer Cup that begins July 19th.
To the Euros 2025 qualifying games. The final 2 games of the league stage will be played July 12th and July 16th. These results will determine who qualifies from League A and who will go into the playoffs to try and qualify. England will face Ireland on the 12th and Sweden on the 16th. In Group A3, France, Sweden and England are all in control of their own destiny, whereas Spain and Germany have statistically already qualified, while the 4th and final group with the Netherlands, Norway, Italy and Finland, it's anyone's game.
And finally, to the Olympics, the women's soccer tournament kicks off on Thursday, July 25th. That is the day before the opening ceremony. We will be doing Olympic coverage here at the Women's Soccer Show, so stay tuned on details on exactly what that will entail. And in the meantime, you can head to our Patreon for an early drop of our Group A preview.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO 10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO 10 at checkout.
And finally, to something a bit more fun. So, officially, as we record on the 24th of June, the WSL and English women's transfer window has opened, and this will be opened until midnight of the 13th of September. And there's going to be some big moves. We've seen there's already a bunch of free agents, massive names that can go absolutely anywhere. You know, we're talking about Frank Kirby, we're talking about Vivian Miedemar. Like, they can go literally anywhere. Maramelda. So the madness starts now.
Madness starts now. And I know we talked a lot about Kira Walsh on last week's podcast, but the big names just continue. I feel like, are there any other notable names that we need to mention that we haven't yet?
Yeah, so obviously Haley Rasso, we just mentioned, has around the world, has left Real Madrid. Rumours are that she might be going to Arsenal, but Juve is interested, PSG is interested, so it'll be interesting to see if she comes back to the WSL or if she goes and stays in Europe.
Haley Rasso would then be not the only player. I mean, obviously Kira Walsh, rumored to also be going to Arsenal. We talked about that last week. Both used to play for City, now going to Arsenal.
Yes, but also, is midfield where Arsenal need to strengthen? I don't think so.
It's a good point.
I think you need to strengthen up top, but that's just me, considering
maybe they're just saying, hey, who cares what the back line is because we're going to get Mary Earps.
Oh, I'm
not starting rumors here. We actually have no idea where Mary Earps will be going.
That's the big one.
I think everybody's money on that is that she is going.
Yeah. Exactly. Where is she going to end up? Nikita Paris is rumoured not to have renewed her contract with Man United. It came out she was offered massive amount of money to join North Carolina, but turned it down in order to play in the FA Cup final.
That's a bummer because I would have loved to see her in North Carolina. I think that could have been a great fit for her.
But she still could.
Yeah, she still could.
So the rumours are that she will not be rejoining Man United and could be seen heading stateside. Ellie Roebuck has already done deal. It was rumoured for a while, but the window opened. She is officially a Barcelona player. It'll be interesting to see how she fits into that squad. I do have a feeling that she will probably be a bit of a bench warmer, but that's not a bad thing. Look what happened with Mary Earps. Mary Earps went to Wolfsburg, played in a couple of cup games, was mainly there for the training, and look at the goalkeeper she became. I think this is a fantastic move for Roebuck.
I think it was just the right moment for her to get out of City. All she was going to do was sit behind a keeper that was younger than her, and she needs a new experience.
Yep. And speaking of Man City, obviously Esme Morgan has gone to the Spirit after the end of many seasons at Man City. So Man City are going to have to look defensively to strengthen, because you also lost Steph Houghton due to retirement. It's going to be interesting at Man City, because at the moment they did really well, came really close in the league, ended up losing Jill Roord to an ACL, which kind of dented their second half of their season. It is going to be interesting to see who they pick up and who's going to slot in.
This is, I think, probably the biggest transfer window we've seen in the WSL for a long time. And I also am very interested to see what happens with Chelsea, because we saw a lot of players leave and we haven't heard as many names rumored to be going there as we've seen leave.
That's it. And, it's Bonpasta's first season, like her first transfer window. Is she going to want to bring in many, or is she going to want to work with what she's got and then see what is needed in the January transfer window, which could backfire? That could be what to do. She is still missing strikers because Sam Kerr and Mia Fishel are still out with ACLs. Obviously you have Ramirez, but you can't rely just on her alone. I think one of Chelsea's biggest problems last year was the lack of rotation, which again almost cost them. Cuthbert played so many minutes. Their midfield played so many minutes. So that'll be interesting. And then to not just focus on the top half of the table, Brighton are obviously losing players at a rate of knots. We mentioned it last week. Sorry, Mike. It's just at the moment, it appears that only West Ham and Man United have not released their released lists as it was. West Ham have announced a couple of re-signings. So Vivian Asai and Kirsty Smith have both re-signed extensions at West Ham. Man United have done nothing because we're on their PR mailing list, and the last thing we got was about new kits. Like, they are keeping this really close to their chest, who isn't leaving, and that makes me think that they've got a lot of free agents that aren't re-signing, and they're trying to keep them signed.
Something we chatted about last week as well. I guess my question for you, Allie, is now that the window's open, for those people who are listening and maybe haven't been close to a WSL transfer window, do moves usually happen at the front of it, at the end of it, sporadically all the way through? My expectation is that not a lot will happen off the bat right now. Would you agree?
Not a lot will happen off the bat. What you will find will happen is if a player has been on loan at a club and then has been released by her parent club, she will more than likely sign for the club that she's played on loan with. So, for example, I'm going to use my beloved West Ham, but Zadorsky was released by Tottenham at the end of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a confirmation that Zadorsky was signing for West Ham permanently, and that will get done because that gets done in the motion of the loan agreement. What you tend to find that's been interesting, this is the first time that England, or Team G as they would have been, haven't been in a major tournament during transfer window. So we obviously had the World Cup and we had the Euros, and that does put negotiations on hold, because what Mary Earps was worth before the Euros is not what she was worth after the Euros. And it's the same with international players as well. So we may think the Olympics is going ahead, but it's not something that's really focused on over here. So that, I think, will be interesting. We'll see more of a steady stream of players being signed, whereas it was before, you'd try and sign them early before they had a good tournament and their value went up, or somebody you hadn't really focused on, you would then pick up after the tournament. So I think it's going to be more steady this time around than it normally is.
I'm keeping an eye on Grace Clinton, who is on loan at Tottenham, signed to Manchester United. My assumption is that they'll recall her and we'll see her with United this following season, or this next season. Do you agree?
I do, and I think that's going to be a shame for Grace, because the thing is, it makes me think that Skinner is going to recall her just so that someone else can't have her.
I agree, because she was so good for Tottenham.
I don't see her in his plan. She's not the player that she think. The biggest rumor that I'm hearing, that, please don't hate me, Man United fans, is that your captain may be moving on. There is
we also talked about that last week.
yeah, but Zella, man, it's but if that happens, then Clinton will probably have more of a chance.
All I hope is that if she does end up in a United shirt this coming season, is that she does get her minutes, because she's a young player who is growing rapidly, and I hope that she continues that growth, because I think there's a place for her also in the national team if she does continue that growth.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a stressful time for WSL fans, but it's also an interesting time.
That's right. All right, and that is it for us today at the Women's Soccer Show. A reminder to head over to our Patreon for all extra content, early releases on Olympic coverage that will be starting soon. And that's it for us here. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.